Hello, in this tutorial I will show how to add transitions in Shotcut. First thing, we need a couple of clips on the timeline. I've already done that. And in Shotcut, to make a transition, you have to place two shots next to each other on the timeline. On a single track, unlike other editors where you have to use multiple tracks and add a transition between them. In Shotcut, it's on a single track, and additional video tracks are primarily for cutaways or for compositing. But the two shots do need to be completely adjacent to one another, and there cannot be a gap between them. For instance, if we were trying to add a transition by overlapping them right now, because there was a gap, that move was rejected and sent back to its original position. So there's two ways to get rid of that gap, and we can just drag and drop to move the clip and utilize the snapping feature to get rid of that gap. Let's undo that. Or we can right click in the gap area and choose remove. Okay, now that we have these two shots adjacent to one another, there's basically two different ways to add a transition, and there's two variations on each of those. But basically you just have to overlap the clips a little bit. And the first way is to drag and drop, overlap, and release. And as you can see, as a result here, if we play through it, we have a nice video dissolve with an audio crossfade. So that was, we'll undo that. That was dragging the shot B onto shot A. The variation on that is you can drag shot A onto shot B. Okay, and now let's say we wanted to resize the transition. Well, we can resize it in either direction. We can, but not both simultaneously right now. But we can drag the trimming handle on shot A to the left or to the right and adjust it. And that made that transition longer, or we can make it shorter. Okay, so that's the first way of doing it. Let's show you the second way of doing it, and that's through trimming. But in order to do that, let me right click on this shot A and open it as a clip. We need some additional frames after the out point on shot A, and sometimes these are referred to as handles. And on shot B, if we open that one up in the source viewer, we need some additional frames to the left or before the end point. Okay, now that that's established, we can make a transition simply by trimming out shot A and dragging it over shot B. Hold on a minute. Sometimes it's helpful to turn off snapping for this. There we go. And we can play through that. And we have a transition by trimming shot A. Let's undo that. And likewise, the variation on this is we can trim the endpoint of shot B to define a transition using the handle on shot B. Now, once you've defined a transition, you can select it, and there are some properties. If you open up the properties, we can see there's video properties and audio properties. By default, the video is a dissolve, but we can also choose a wipe. Here's a horizontal bar wipe, and it went from left to right. If we check invert, it reverses the motion of the wipe. And now it goes from right to left. And if you look at this, the transition has 20% softness by default here. If we drag it all the way down to 0, then we have a hard edge. And you can drag it all the way up to 100%, and it's fairly subtle. You could think of it as like a variation on a crossfade or a dissolve. And under the audio options, the default is crossfade the audio, but for some reason you could choose that you want to during the transition to only play the audio for clip A, in which case you would choose mix and leave the slider on the A end all the way to the A end. Or if you only want the audio from the B shot, you can drag the slider all the way over to B. If for some reason you want a constant mix of the two during the transition, you can change the mix level. And another thing is, under the transition wipe definition, we can also choose custom. And this lets you pick any grayscale gradient type of image in a number of formats. In here I have one in a PGM grayscale format that defines like a burst star pattern kind of thing. Let's look at that with a little bit harder edge. And if you go to the FAQ page on the website, shotcut.org, there's a few links to some places where you can download some of these wipe definitions. And that's it. Thank you.